The fluorescent lights hummed above range for at 0500, casting pale light across concrete floors still marked with yesterday's brass casings. Maria Delgado pushed her cleaning cart through the side entrance, the squeaky wheel announcing her presence to no one. The range was empty at this hour, the way she preferred it. She had 45 minutes before the first SEAL team arrived, 45 minutes of silence before she became invisible again. She started with the firing lanes, sweeping spent casings into neat piles with practiced efficiency. Her grandfather had taught her to respect a range, to leave it cleaner than she found it. He had taught her many things in the years before the cancer took him, lessons she carried like stones in her pockets, heavy but essential. The door banged open at 0530, earlier than usual. Maria stepped back against the wall as 8 men filed in, their voices filling the space she had just cleaned. She recognized them by their patches, Team 7, the ones who trained hardest and complained loudest. Their instructor walked behind them, a man whose name she had learned from overheard conversations. Chief Warrant Officer Kyle Brennan. He carried himself like a man who had never been wrong about anything in his life. She continued sweeping along the back wall, staying in the shadows, watching as the team set up at the 800-meter line. This was the part she never admitted to anyone, the watching. She studied their stances, their breathing, the way they anticipated recoil. Most were good. A few were exceptional. One was struggling. The young one, Petty Officer Chun, according to the name on his gear, fired 3 rounds that scattered across the target like buckshot. Brennan was on him immediately. What the hell was that, Chun? My grandmother could shoot tighter groups, and she's been dead for 15 years. Brennan's voice carried across the range like a whip crack. You think the enemy is going to wait while you figure out which way the barrel points? Chun adjusted his position, fired again. The grouping improved slightly, but still sat outside the center ring. Maybe we should get the cleaning lady to show you how it is done. Brennan gestured toward Maria without looking at her. She has watched enough shooting. Maybe she absorbed something through osmosis. The team laughed, the kind of laughter that followed power rather than humor. Maria kept sweeping, her expression unchanged. She had been invisible for 3 years at this facility, and invisibility was safety. But Brennan was not finished. He walked toward her, his boots heavy on the concrete she had just cleaned. Hey, cleaning lady, you want to try? He held out his SR-25 rifle like a dare. Like a joke, he expected her to decline. Now, wherever you're watching this from right now, whether that is California or Texas or somewhere overseas, you have probably had a moment like this. A moment when someone assumed you were nothing, when they handed you something expecting you to fail. Comment below and tell me where you are watching from and whether you have ever had someone underestimate you like this. Maria looked at the rifle, then at Brennan's smirking face. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. Never let them see you unless you want to be seen. She had stayed hidden for 3 years. But something in Brennan's treatment of Chun, something in that cruel laughter, cracked open a door she had kept sealed. She set down her broom. The team went quiet. Brennan's smirk flickered, just for a moment, as she reached for the weapon. She took it from his hands, feeling the familiar weight settle into her grip like a homecoming. The SR-25 was heavier than her grandfather's rifle, but the principles were the same. Everything was always the same. She checked the chamber, examined the scope. The zero was off by 2 clicks, probably from Brennan dropping it at some point. She adjusted without asking permission, her fingers moving with a certainty that came from 10,000 hours of practice. The range had gone completely silent. Maria walked to the firing line, settled into a prone position that her grandfather had drilled into her muscles before she turned 10. She controlled her breathing, felt her heartbeat slow, found the space between beats where the world went still. She fired 3 times in 4 seconds. The target at 800 meters showed 3 holes grouped so tightly they could be covered by a quarter. Center mass, perfect triangulation. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The brass casings rolled across the concrete in the silence, coming to rest against Maria's cleaning cart. Brennan walked to the spotting scope, looked through it for a long moment. When he turned back, his expression had transformed from mockery to something harder, something that looked like the first spark of a fire that would burn for weeks. "Who the hell are you?" he said. Maria was already walking back to her cart, picking up her broom, returning to the invisibility that had protected her for 3 years. But she could feel it slipping away with every step, feel the weight of 8 pairs of eyes following her across the range. "I am a cleaning lady," she said, "and your scope was off by 2 clicks. She pushed her cart toward the exit, the squeaky was the only sound in the room. Behind her, she heard Brennan's voice, low and dangerous, speaking to his team. "Not a word about this to anyone. You understand me?" Not one word. But Maria knew how bases worked, knew how stories traveled through barracks and mess halls like wildfire through dry brush. By noon, everyone would know what happened on Range 4. By tomorrow, her 3 years of invisibility would be nothing but memory. She had not meant to be seen, but some things, once revealed, could never be hidden again. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Webb had reviewed thousands of hours of training footage in her 6 years as oversight officer. She had seen exceptional shooters, mediocre shooters, and men who should never have been allowed near a weapon. She had never seen anything like the video playing on her screen. The timestamp read 0542, Range 4. The cleaning lady, the woman Webb had passed in hallways for years without ever learning her name, stood at the firing line with Brennan's SR-25. Her stance was textbook perfect, the kind of form that took years to develop. Her breathing was visible in the slight rise and fall of her shoulders, controlled and deliberate. Then 3 shots for seconds in a grouping that would have qualified for any special operations unit in the world. Webb rewound the footage and watched it again. Then a 3rd time. The woman's movements showed no hesitation, no uncertainty. She handled the weapon like an extension of her own body, adjusted the scope with fingers that knew exactly what they were doing. This was not luck. This was not a fluke. This was mastery. She pulled up the personnel database and searched for maintenance contractors assigned to the range facilities. Maria Delgado, age 34, employed by Coastal Facilities Management for 3 years. Background check cleared for base access. No military service. No listed firearms certifications. No anything. The file was practically empty, the kind of generic documentation that came from someone who wanted to stay invisible. Webb had seen files like this before, usually belonging to people with something to hide. The question was whether that something was dangerous or simply private. She printed the file and headed for the maintenance building. Maria was cleaning equipment in the back storage area when Webb found her, surrounded by mops and industrial cleaning supplies. The contrast was almost absurd. This woman who shot like a Tier 1 operator scrubbing floors in a concrete room that smelled of bleach. "Ms. Delgado," Webb said, "I am Lieutenant Commander Webb, training oversight. Do you have a moment?" Maria's hands stilled on the mop handle. Her expression remained neutral, but Webb caught the slight tension in her shoulders, the way her weight shifted almost imperceptibly toward the exit. "Of course, Commander. How can I help you?" Webb studied her for a moment before speaking. "I reviewed the Range 4 footage from this morning. That was impressive shooting." Maria returned to her mopping, the rhythm steady and unhurried. "Chief Brennan offered me a try. I did not want to be rude. Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My grandfather taught me when I was young. We used to practice on his property in Arizona. Just family stuff, nothing formal." The answer was smooth, rehearsed, the kind of response that answered the question without revealing anything. Webb had conducted enough interrogations to recognize deflection when she heard it. She watched Maria's hands as she worked. The calluses were visible even from several feet away, thick ridges across her palms and fingers that came from thousands of hours gripping a rifle stock. Her trigger finger showed the distinctive wear pattern of someone who shot regularly, not occasionally. These were not the hands of someone who learned family stuff as a child and never practiced again. "Your hands tell a different story," Webb said. Maria glanced down at her palms, then back at Webb. Her expression flickered, something between resignation and calculation passing across her features. "I keep up with it sometimes. There's a range outside the city where civilians can practice. It helps me relax." "What is the range?" Maria paused just long enough for Webb to notice. Desert Wind Shooting Club. Out past El Cajon. Webb made a mental note to verify that. The hesitation suggested it was true, but incomplete, another partial answer designed to satisfy without revealing. The door behind them banged open. Brennan strode in with the confidence of a man who owned every room he entered, his eyes finding Maria before settling on Webb with obvious displeasure. Commander Webb, I was not aware you had business with the maintenance staff. I am following up on this morning's training session, Chief. The footage was interesting. Brennan's jaw tightened. That footage should not have left the range security system. I'll be speaking with the tech staff about access protocols. All training footage routes through my office. You know that. What happened this morning was a fluke, Brennan said. His voice carried the hard edge of a man trying to control a narrative that was slipping away from him. The cleaning lady got lucky. It happens sometimes. A blind squirrel finds a nut. I would hate for Command to waste resources investigating a statistical anomaly. Webb held his gaze. 3 shots in 4 seconds at 800 meters with a weapon she had never fired before. That is quite an anomaly. She has been watching us train for years. She probably memorized the basics. Muscle memory can do strange things when adrenaline kicks in. Brennan turned to Maria, and his voice shifted to something that sounded almost friendly, but carried an undertone of warning. Is that not right, Ms. Delgado? You just got lucky. Maria met his eyes without flinching. Yes, Chief. Very lucky. The exchange lasted only a moment, but Webb caught everything beneath it. The threat in Brennan's posture, the careful compliance in Maria's response, the power dynamic of a man who expected to be obeyed and a woman who had learned to survive by not challenging that expectation. I think we're done here, Brennan said. Ms. Delgado has work to do, and I'm sure you have actual training matters to review. He held the door open, a gesture that looked polite but functioned as a command. Webb gathered her file and walked past him, pausing at the threshold. I will be in touch, MS. Delgado, if you think of anything else about your training background, my office is in Building 7. Maria nodded once, already returning to her mopping, disappearing back into the invisibility she had cultivated for 3 years. Webb walked toward her office with the personnel file tucked under her arm. Brennan fell in a step beside her, his presence a wall of controlled aggression. I want to be clear about something, Commander. What happened on my range this morning was an embarrassment, not an achievement. I do not need oversight investigating my training staff because a cleaning lady got a lucky break. It sent the wrong message. What message would that be, Chief? That anyone can do what we do. That years of training mean nothing. That some random civilian can walk in off the street and match Tier 1 operators. He stopped walking, forcing Webb to stop as well. My men saw what happened. If this becomes a thing, if Command starts asking questions, it undermines everything we have built here. Webb considered her response carefully. Brennan had connections, an uncle at the Pentagon who had smoothed over problems before. But she had watched that footage 3 times, and she knew what she had seen. I'm just doing my job, Chief. Documenting training outcomes is part of my mandate. Then document it accurately. Document that a civilian contractor was allowed to handle military equipment without authorization, that she took an unsafe shot without proper supervision, and that the incident has been handled internally. That is the accurate version. He walked away before she could respond, his boots echoing on the concrete like a threat. Webb continued to her office alone, the personnel file growing heavier in her hands with every step. Maria Delgado was hiding something. Brennan was trying to bury something. And somewhere between those 2 secrets lay a truth that was starting to demand attention. Kyle Brennan had not slept well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the cleaning lady adjusting his scope, saw her grouping on that target, saw the faces of his men as they watched a woman in a maintenance uniform outshoot their instructor. The humiliation sat in his chest like a hot coal, burning brighter with every passing hour. He arrived at his office at 0600, 2 hours before his scheduled training session. The personnel file for Maria Delgado lay open on his desk, the same sparse pages he had reviewed 4 times already. Civilian contractor. Background check cleared. No military service. No certifications. Nothing he could use. But there had to be something. Nobody shot like that without a history, without records, without a trail. She was hiding, and people who hid always had reasons. He just needed to find hers. He picked up his phone and dialed base security. Master Chief Torres answered on the second ring, his voice carrying the gruff efficiency of a man who had spent 30 years solving problems. Torres, this is Chief Brennan. I need to discuss a security concern regarding one of our civilian contractors. What kind of concern? Brennan had rehearsed this conversation in his head a dozen times. Maria Delgado works maintenance on the range facilities. Yesterday, she accessed training equipment without authorization, handled weapons, interfered with an active session. I need her access restricted during operational hours. There was a pause on the line. Restricted how? She should not be in the range buildings when training is active. Safety issue. She does not have the clearance to be around live fire operations, and frankly, her presence is a distraction to my operators. Torres exhaled slowly. I will need documentation for something like that. Incident report, witness statements. You know how this works. I am giving you a verbal report right now. My entire team witnessed the incident. She picked up a loaded weapon without permission and fired it. That is a safety violation at minimum, potentially a security breach if we want to look at it closely. Another pause. This have anything to do with the footage I heard about? The grouping at 800 meters. Brennan's grip tightened on the phone. Where did you hear about that? Base is small, Chief. Stories travel. Word is the cleaning lady showed up some Tier 1 operators. Word is wrong. She got lucky, and now she is a liability. I want her restricted, Torres. Make it happen. He hung up before Torres could ask more questions. The security chief would comply eventually. Everyone complied eventually. It was just a matter of applying the right pressure in the right places. Brennan gathered his materials and headed for the team room. His operators were already there, checking equipment and running through morning protocols. They fell silent when he entered, and he could see it in their eyes. The question they were all too smart to ask. The doubt that had crept in overnight. He let the silence stretch before speaking. What happened yesterday stays on this base. Anyone talks about it outside these walls. Anyone posts anything online. Anyone so much as mentions it to their wives. And I will personally ensure their next deployment is somewhere they will deeply regret. We clear. Nods around the room. Good. There is something else. The cleaning lady, Delgado. I want eyes on her whenever she is in our facilities. She accesses areas she should not, touches equipment she should not, looks at documents she should not. I want to know about it. Everything gets documented. Everything gets reported to me. Rodriguez, one of his senior petty officers, shifted uncomfortably. Chief, she has been cleaning these facilities for years. Never had an issue before. We have an issue now. Brennan met his eyes until Rodriguez looked away. She is a civilian with unknown background who demonstrated capabilities inconsistent with her cover story. That makes her a potential security risk until proven otherwise. Treat her accordingly. He scanned the room, reading their faces. Most showed the compliant blankness of men who followed orders without question. But one face showed something different. Chin stood near the back, his expression troubled. The young operator had been the target of Brennan's criticism yesterday, the catalyst for the whole humiliating incident. Now, he looked like a man wrestling with something he did not want to say. You have a problem, Chun? Chun hesitated. No, Chief. Your face says different. Speak. The room went still. Chin glanced at his teammates, found no support, and squared his shoulders. It just seems like a lot of resources for a cleaning lady who made some good shots. Maybe she got lucky, like you said. Maybe we are overreacting. Brennan crossed the room slowly, each step deliberate. He stopped inches from Chun, close enough to smell the younger man's coffee breath. Let me explain something to you, petty officer. Your performance yesterday was an embarrassment. You could not hit center mass at 800 meters, a distance most of my operators consider a warm-up. Then a civilian picked up your rifle and did what you could not. In front of your entire team. Chin's jaw tightened, but he held his ground. Now, Brennan continued, you can spend your energy questioning my decisions, or you could spend it improving your pathetic marksmanship before your next evaluation. Because right now, Your file shows a shooter who cannot perform under pressure and an attitude that questions his commanding officer. That is not a combination that leads to a long career in this community. He let the threat hang in the air for a moment before stepping back. Anyone else have concerns they would like to share? Silence. Good. Training starts in 30 minutes. Chun, you are on extra range time until your groupings improve. Dismissed. The team filed out, leaving Brennan alone with the satisfaction of control reasserted. Chun would fall in line. They always did. And by the time he was finished, Maria Delgado would either disappear back into her invisible life or find herself removed from the base entirely. His phone buzzed. A text from Torres. Access restricted, effective immediately. She will be notified at next shift. Brennan smiled for the first time since yesterday morning. 3 hours later, Maria Delgado walked toward range with her cleaning cart, the squeaky wheel announcing her approach. She did not know that everything had changed, that the world she had carefully constructed over 3 years was already crumbling. The guard at the entrance stepped in front of her, his face apologetic but firm. Sorry, Mom. Your access to this facility has been restricted during training hours. New security protocol. Maria stopped. Since when? Effective today. You will need to coordinate with your supervisor for alternative scheduling. She stood there for a long moment, her hand resting on the cart handle, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and walked away without another word, the squeaky wheel fading down the corridor like a retreat. From his office window, Brennan watched her go. This was just the beginning. By the time he was finished, she would wish she had never touched his rifle. Maria's apartment was small and sparse, the kind of place that revealed nothing about the person who lived there. White walls, minimal furniture, no photographs on display. She had learned long ago that photographs invited questions, and questions led to conversations she did not want to have. But in the closet, behind winter coats she never wore in San Diego, a different story waited. She pulled the cardboard box from the back corner and set it on her bed. The tape had yellowed with age, but she knew every item inside without looking. She opened it anyway, the way she did every few months when the weight of hiding became too heavy to carry alone. The photograph lay on top. Her grandfather in Vietnam, 1968, his sniper rifle cradled across his chest like a sleeping child. Staff Sergeant Roberto Delgado, scout sniper, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. He had been 22 in that photo, younger than most of the SEALs she cleaned up after every day. His eyes held a steadiness that she had spent her whole life trying to understand. He had started teaching her when she was 8 years old, not because she asked, but because he saw something in her that reminded him of himself. Patience, he called it. The ability to wait for the right moment without letting the waiting drive you crazy. Their property in Arizona had stretched for miles, empty desert where a rifle shot could travel without hitting anything you did not intend to hit. He built targets at every distance, from 50 meters to over 1,000, and walked her through each one like stations of the cross. Breath control, trigger discipline, wind reading, the mathematics of ballistics that turned shooting from instinct into science. By 12, she could outshoot most adults. By 16, she had won her first state championship. By 20, she held 3 national titles in long-range precision rifle competition. Her name printed in magazines, she never showed anyone outside the shooting community. Then her grandfather died, and everything stopped. She lifted the trophies from the box one by one, their surfaces dulled by years in darkness. Arizona State Champion, 2015. Western Regional Long Range, first place, 2016. National Precision Rifle Series, Champion, 2017. Each one represented hundreds of hours of practice, thousands of rounds downrange, a version of herself she had buried when she buried him. The phone rang, startling her back to the present. She checked the screen. Unknown number with a local area code. Ms. Delgado, this is Lieutenant Commander Webb. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Maria looked at the trophies spread across her bed, evidence of everything she had tried to leave behind. The timing felt less like coincidence and more like fate demanding a reckoning. What can I do for you, Commander? I was hoping we could meet. Off base, somewhere private. I have some questions about your background, and I think you might be more comfortable talking away from official channels. Maria's instincts screamed caution. 3 years of invisibility, 3 years of safety, and now this woman wanted to dig into the past she had worked so hard to bury. The smart move was to decline, to maintain the story about her grandfather and family practice, and leave it at that. But something in Webb's voice gave her pause. There was no accusation in it, no threat, just curiosity and something that sounded almost like respect. What kind of questions? The kind that your personnel file does not answer. I saw the footage, Ms. Delgado. I know what I watched was not luck, and I know it was not beginner's chance. Someone trained you well, and I would like to understand why you're cleaning rifle ranges instead of teaching on them. Maria closed her eyes. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory, the advice he gave her when she won her first championship and reporters started calling. You can stay hidden your whole life, Mija, but hiding is not the same as living. Sooner or later, you have to decide which one you want. She had chosen hiding after he died, chosen to walk away from competition, from recognition, from anything that might draw attention to the skills he had given her. She took a job that made her invisible and built a life around not being seen. But Brennan had changed that. The moment she took his rifle, the moment she fired those 3 shots, she had stepped out of the shadows. Now the only question was whether she would step back in or keep walking forward. There's a coffee shop on Orange Avenue, she said. The one with the blue awning across from the bookstore. I can meet you there in an hour. I will be there. And Ms. Delgado, this conversation stays between us. I'm not looking to cause you problems. Maria hung up and looked at the trophies again. 3 years of hiding, undone by 30 seconds on a firing line. Maybe it was time to stop running from who she used to be. She reached into the box and pulled out the last item, the one she had not touched since the funeral. Her grandfather's dog tags, the metal worn smooth by decades against his chest. He had pressed them into her hand the day before he died, his grip weak, but his eyes sharp. You carry my name, he had said. Carry it well. She slipped the chain over her head, feeling the tags settle against her sternum. They had hung there through every competition, every championship, every shot that mattered. She had taken them off when she buried him, convinced that part of her life was over. Maybe she had been wrong. She put the trophies back in the box, but left it open on the bed. A small rebellion against the hiding, a crack in the wall she had built around herself. Then she grabbed her keys and headed for the door. Lieutenant Commander Webb wanted to know who Maria Delgado really was. For the first time in 3 years, Maria thought she might be ready to tell someone. The drive to Orange Avenue took 15 minutes, long enough for doubt to creep back in. Webb could be working with Brennan, gathering information to use against her. The meeting could be a trap, a way to document her lies and justify removing her from the base entirely. But her grandfather had taught her to read people the same way he taught her to read wind. You watch their eyes, he said. The mouth can lie, but the eyes always tell the truth. Webb's eyes had shown no deception, only questions and the particular intensity of someone who had found a puzzle worth solving. Maria parked and walked toward the blue awning, the dog tags warm against her skin. Whatever happened next, she was done being invisible. Brennan had made sure of that the moment he handed her his rifle and expected her to fail. Now it was time to show everyone exactly who they had been overlooking for 3 years. Webb arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes early, a habit from her intelligence training that she had never managed to break. She chose a table in the back corner with sight lines to both entrances and ordered black coffee she did not intend to drink. The cup was a prop, something to hold while she waited. Maria Delgado walked in exactly on time, scanning the room with the practiced awareness of someone who always knew where the exits were. Her eyes found Webb immediately, and she crossed the shop with purpose. No hesitation, no nervous glances. Whatever decision she had made about this meeting, she had made it completely. She sat down across from Webb without ordering anything. Thank you for meeting me off base, Commander. I thought you might speak more freely away from official channels. Webb studied her face, looking for the tells that would reveal what kind of conversation this would be. Maria's expression was calm, but not closed, guarded, but not hostile. A woman preparing to share something she had kept private for a long time. You said you had questions about my background. I do. Webb set down her coffee cup. I spent last night researching competitive shooting circuits. National Precision Rifle Series, Western Regional Long Range, various state championships. Your name appears in the records, Ms. Delgado. Appears quite prominently, actually. Maria's shoulders relaxed slightly, as if the confirmation of what Webb knew had released some tension she had been carrying. You found the results. 3 national titles. Multiple regional championships. You were ranked 4th in the country at your peak. Then you disappeared from competition entirely in 2018. No explanation, no farewell, just gone. My grandfather died. Maria's voice remained steady, but something shifted in her eyes. He was the one who taught me, the one who pushed me to compete. After he was gone, I did not see the point anymore. Webb nodded slowly. That explains why you stopped competing. It does not explain why you took a job cleaning rifle ranges for men who could not shoot half as well as you. Maria was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. Have you ever lost someone who was everything to you, Commander? Someone who shaped every part of who you are? Webb thought of her father, career Navy, dead from a heart attack 3 months after retirement. She thought of the uniform hanging in her closet that she had almost quit wearing after the funeral. Yes, I have. Then you know that grief makes you do strange things. I cannot look at a rifle without seeing his hands on it. Could not step onto a range without hearing his voice in my ear. So I found a job where I could be around it without having to touch it. Close enough to remember, far enough to survive. The explanation made a painful kind of sense. Webb had seen soldiers cope with loss in stranger ways. At least Maria had stayed connected to her world, even if only as a ghost haunting its edges. Why did you take the shot? Webb asked. If you wanted to stay hidden, if you'd spent 3 years being invisible, why pick up that rifle? Maria's jaw tightened. Because of the way Brennan was treating that young operator. Chun, screaming at him, humiliating him in front of his team for missing shots that half those men would have missed too. My grandfather hated that kind of leadership. He always said that real teachers build people up. They do not tear them down to feel powerful. So you revealed yourself to make a point. I reveal myself because I forgot to stay hidden. Maria met Webb's eyes directly. For 30 seconds, I was not a cleaning lady trying to disappear. I was my grandfather's student, and I could not stand there and watch that kid get destroyed for not being perfect. Webb understood that impulse better than she wanted to admit. The moments when principle overrode self-preservation, when staying silent became more painful than speaking up. Those moments had a way of changing everything. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Maria, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm when I do. Maria's expression sharpened. What is it? Chief Brennan has filed a formal complaint against you. He is claiming you are a security risk, that your undocumented skills suggest possible foreign training or intelligence connections. He wants you removed from the base permanently and is pushing for a full background investigation. Maria stared at her. He thinks I'm a spy. He is creating a paper trail to justify getting rid of you. Whether he believes it or not is irrelevant. What matters is that he has enough rank and enough connections to make this uncomfortable for you if it is not handled correctly. The color drained from Maria's face, but her voice stayed steady. What kind of connections? His uncle is a rear admiral at the Pentagon. Brennan has had complaints filed against him before, 3 that I found in his service record. All of them disappeared without action. He knows how to work the system, and right now, he is working it against you. Maria sat back in her chair, processing. 3 years. 3 years of keeping my head down, doing my job, being nobody. And one moment of weakness is going to cost me everything. Not if I can help it. Webb leaned forward. I am the training oversight officer for this command. Brennan's complaint came across my desk, which means I am the one who decides whether it has merit. And right now, I do not see a security risk. I see a grieving woman with an extraordinary skill set who made the mistake of embarrassing the wrong man. Why would you help me? You do not know me. Because I watched that footage and I know what I saw. Webb's voice carried a conviction that surprised even her. I saw a woman who has not touched a competition rifle in years fire 3 perfect shots under pressure. That is not foreign training. That is not espionage. That is talent and discipline and thousands of hours of practice with someone who loved her enough to teach her properly. Maria's eyes glistened, but she did not look away. I am going to investigate Brennan's claims, Webb continued. I'm going to document everything properly, interview witnesses, and build a record that shows exactly what happened on that range. And when I'm finished, his complaint is going to look like exactly what it is. Retaliation from a man who cannot handle being shown up by someone he considered beneath him. He will not stop. Maria's voice was quiet. Men like him never do. Then we will be ready for whatever he tries next. Webb extended her hand across the table. I'm not asking you to trust me completely. I'm asking you to give me a chance to help. Maria looked at the offered hand for a long moment. Then she reached out and took it, her grip firm and steady. My grandfather always said you could tell everything about a person by the way they shook hands. Maria almost smiled. He would have liked you, Commander. Webb returned the grip. Then let us make sure his granddaughter does not get railroaded by a man who is not fit to clean her rifle. They released hands, and Webb gathered her folder. She had come to this meeting looking for answers about Maria's past. She was leaving with something more important, an alliance, and the beginning of a fight she intended to win. Danny Chun had wanted to be a SEAL since he was 14 years old, watching documentaries about special operations while other kids play video games. He had pushed his body through 4 years of preparation, survived BUD/S when 60% of his class rang the bell, and earned his trident with blood and determination. Nothing in that journey had prepared him for what he witnessed in the team room that morning. Brennan stood at the whiteboard, marker in hand, outlining a surveillance operation. But the target was not a foreign asset or a terrorist cell. The target was Maria Delgado. I want documentation on everything, Brennan said. Every time she enters a restricted area, every time she touches equipment she should not touch, every time she so much as looks at classified materials. Photographs, timestamps, written reports. We are building a case, gentlemen, and I want it airtight. Rodriguez raised his hand. Chief, what exactly are we building a case for? She's a cleaning lady. She is a security risk with an unknown background and demonstrated capabilities that do not match her cover story. Brennan's voice carried the absolute certainty of a man who had never questioned his own judgment. Until we know who trained her and why she is here, she gets treated like a hostile asset. Clear. The room murmured agreement. Chun stayed silent, his stomach turning. I want rotating coverage, Brennan continued. 2 men on her at all times when she is on base. She does not sneeze without us knowing about it. And if she steps 1 foot out of line, I want to know immediately. The briefing ended and the team dispersed. Chun lingered, pretending to check his gear while his mind raced through options. He could stay quiet, keep his head down, protect his career. That was the smart play, the safe play. But he kept seeing Maria's face on that range, the calm precision of someone who had spent a lifetime mastering a craft. He kept hearing the crack of her shots, 3 perfect rounds that exposed everything Brennan claimed to be as hollow performance. She had not asked for any of this. She had just taken a shot when someone offered her the chance. He found her during lunch, restocking supplies in the maintenance building. The space smelled of cleaning chemicals and industrial soap, a world away from the tactical glamour of the team room. Maria looked up when he entered, her expression guarded. Petty Officer Chun, I did not expect to see you here. He checked the hallway behind him, confirming they were alone. I needed to talk to you. Off the record. Maria set down the bottle she was holding. What about? Brennan is organizing surveillance on you. The whole team, rotating shifts, documenting everything you do on base. He is building a case to have you removed, maybe worse. Her expression did not change, but he saw her hands tighten on the supply card. Why are you telling me this? Because what he is doing is wrong. Chun moved closer, lowering his voice. I have seen him do this before. There was a guy on the team 2 years ago, Martinez. Good operator, but he pushed back on Brennan during a training exercise. suggested a different approach in front of the team. What happened to him? Brennan found reasons to write him up. Small stuff at first, uniform violations, late reports. Then bigger things started appearing in his file. Insubordination, failure to follow orders. Martinez tried to fight it, but the paperwork was overwhelming. He got transferred to a supply unit in Nebraska. Career over. Maria absorbed this quietly, and nobody said anything. Chun felt the shame of that silence like a weight on his chest. Nobody wanted to be next. Brennan has connections, protection. His uncle is some admiral at the Pentagon. Complaints against him disappear. People who make trouble disappear faster. So why are you risking it now? He thought about the question, searching for an honest answer. Because I was the one he was screaming at when you took that shot. I was the one who could not hit center mass, the one he was using to make himself look good. And instead of letting you fail, instead of watching you embarrass yourself the way he expected, you showed everyone what real skill looks like. That was not about you. I know, but it changed something for me. Chun met her eyes. My whole life, I wanted to be part of this community. The brotherhood, the excellence, all of it. But watching Brennan operate, watching how he treats people who cannot fight back, I'm starting to wonder what I actually signed up for. Maria studied him for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small notebook and pen. She wrote something and tore out the page. This is my number. If you see anything I need to know about, call me. But be careful. I have already cost you enough. Chun took the paper, folding it into his palm. What do you mean? Before Maria could answer, the door banged open. Brennan stood in the entrance, his face dark with barely contained rage. Well, Brennan stepped inside, his boots heavy on the concrete floor. Is this not cozy? My operator and my security risk having a private conversation. Chun straightened. Chief, I was just asking about the cleaning schedule for the team room. Were you? Brennan moved closer, positioning himself between Chun and the exit. Because it looked like something else entirely. It looked like one of my men passing information to a person of interest in an ongoing security investigation. That is not what happened. Then what had happened, Chun? Brennan's voice dropped to something quiet and dangerous. Did she recruit you? Did she offer you something? Or are you just stupid enough to think I would not find out? Maria stepped forward. He did nothing wrong. I asked him a question about towel supplies. That is all. I did not ask you. Brennan did not look at her, his eyes fixed on Chun. You are dismissed, Ms. Delgado. Get out of my sight before I add interference with an investigation to your file. Maria hesitated, glancing at Chun. He gave her a slight nod, and she gathered her supplies and left, the cart's squeaky wheel fading down the corridor. Brennan waited until the sound disappeared before speaking again. You have made a serious error in judgment, petty officer. Chief, nothing inappropriate happened. I will decide what happened. Brennan pulled out his phone and made a note. You're getting a formal counseling statement in your file. Failure to maintain professional boundaries, conduct unbecoming, and associating with a person under security review. That is not fair. Fair. Brennan stepped so close Chun could smell his coffee breath. You want to talk about fair? You could not hit a target at 800 meters, and a cleaning lady showed you up in front of the entire team. That was not fair either, but here we are. He turned and walked toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Choose your side carefully, Chun, because right now, you are standing on the wrong one. The door closed behind him, and Chun stood alone in the maintenance room, the folded paper still pressed into his palm. His career, the thing he had sacrificed years to build, was now officially at risk. He thought about Martinez in Nebraska. He thought about the admiral at the Pentagon. He thought about all the people who had stayed silent, because silence was safer. Then he put Maria's number in his pocket and walked out into the sun, his decision already made. The personnel records room sat in the basement of Building 7, a fluorescent-lit archive where careers lived and died in manila folders. Webb had spent 3 hours down there, pulling files, cross-referencing dates, building a timeline that told a story Brennan had worked hard to bury. 3 formal complaints in 6 years. The first from a junior instructor who accused Brennan of falsifying training evaluations. The second from an enlisted man who claimed harassment and intimidation. The third from Martinez, the operator Chun had mentioned documenting a pattern of targeted abuse that spanned 8 months. All 3 complaints had been marked resolved with no action taken. All 3 complainants had been transferred within 60 days of filing. All 3 had left the SEAL community entirely within a year. Webb photographed each file with her phone, creating a digital record that could not disappear the way the original complaint had. Then she pulled Brennan's service jacket and found exactly what she expected: exemplary evaluations, commendations, a promotion trajectory that moved only upward. On paper, he was a model officer. In practice, he was a predator who had learned to hunt without leaving tracks. She returned to her office and made a call that took 20 minutes of transferred lines and verified credentials before connecting. The voice that finally answered was tired and wary. "This is former Petty Officer, First Class James Whitmore." "Who is this?" "Mr. Whitmore, this is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Webb, training oversight at Naval Special Warfare Command. I'm calling about a complaint you filed in 2019 regarding Chief Warrant Officer Kyle Brennan." The silence on the line stretched long enough that Webb thought he had hung up. "Why are you asking about that now?" "Because I believe the same pattern is happening again, and I'm trying to stop it." Another pause, then a bitter laugh. "Good luck with that, Commander. I tried to stop it too. You see how that worked out for me." Webb leaned forward in her chair. "Can you tell me what happened?" "What happened is I watched Brennan destroy a young operator for questioning him during a training exercise. Kid named Thompson, good shooter, bad timing. He suggested an alternative approach in front of the team, and Brennan made it his mission to end that kid's career." "Thompson." Webb flipped through her notes. "I did not have a complaint from anyone named Thompson. That is because Thompson never filed one. He just washed out. Medical separation, anxiety disorder. Brennan ground him down until he broke. I filed the complaint on Thompson's behalf, documented everything I had witnessed over 2 years. Dates, incidents, witnesses. And then I got called into a meeting with the base commander and some captain I had never seen before. They explained that my complaint had been reviewed and found to lack sufficient evidence. They explained that Chief Brennan had an exemplary record and strong support from senior leadership. They explained that continued pursuit of unfounded allegations could be seen as insubordination. Webb felt her jaw tighten. "They threatened you." "They did not have to. The message was clear enough." 2 weeks later, I got orders to a supply depot in Guam. My career in special operations ended with a signature I never saw. "Who was the captain in that meeting?" Whitmore laughed again. "That is the part you really need to understand, Commander. Brennan's uncle is Rear Admiral Charles Brennan, Pentagon Naval Operations. The captain in my meeting had just come from the Admiral's staff." Webb closed her eyes. The protection went higher than she had imagined. "I'm telling you this because you sound like you actually want to help," Whitmore continued. "But you need to know what you are walking into. Brennan is not just some bully with a chip on his shoulder. He is connected, he is protected, and he has been doing this for years because nobody with the power to stop him has ever been willing to try. I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Whitmore. Do not appreciate it. Use it. And Commander, be careful. These people play for keeps." The line went dead, and Webb sat alone with the weight of what she had learned. This was not a simple harassment case. This was an institutional failure protected by political connections, a system designed to protect its own regardless of who got destroyed in the process. She gathered her files and walked to Captain Ford's office. Marcus Ford had commanded the training division for 4 years, long enough to know every skeleton in every closet on base. He listened to Webb's briefing without interruption, his expression growing darker with each documented incident. 3 complaints, she concluded. 3 transfers. 1 connected admiral. And now a civilian contractor is being targeted because she embarrassed him on a range. Ford leaned back in his chair. "You're asking me to go against a man whose uncle sits at the Pentagon. I'm asking you to let me investigate properly. Document everything. Interview witnesses. Build a record that cannot be dismissed as unfounded allegations. If Brennan is clean, the investigation will show that. If he is not, we have a duty to act. A duty." Ford's voice carried the weariness of a man who had learned that duty and politics rarely aligned. "Webb, I have known Kyle Brennan for 8 years. I have seen him produce some of the finest operators in this command. I have also heard whispers about his methods, rumors I chose not to pursue, because pursuing them would have meant taking on his uncle. And now you're sitting in my office with documentation I cannot ignore. Ford rubbed his temples. If I authorize this investigation and it goes sideways, my career ends the same way Whitmore's did. You understand that? I understand that a cleaning lady is being framed as a security risk because she outshot a Tier 1 instructor. I understand that Chun received a counseling statement for warning her about surveillance. I understand that 3 people have had their careers destroyed because they tried to speak up. Ford was quiet for a long moment. You have 2 weeks, he finally said. Quiet investigation only. No formal interviews with Brennan or his team until you have enough evidence to justify escalation. If this turns into a political fight before we are ready, we will lose. 2 weeks is not much time. Then work fast. Ford met her eyes. And Webb, watch your back. If Brennan finds out what you are doing before you are ready to move, he will come after you the same way he came after the others. Webb gathered her files and stood. I have been watching my back since I was a lieutenant captain. I know how this game is played. She walked out of his office with authorization she had not expected to receive and a timeline that felt impossibly short. 2 weeks to build a case against a man with 6 years of practice covering his tracks and an admiral protecting his flank. But she also had something Whitmore and Martinez and Thompson had not had. She had documentation before the attacks began. She had allies who were willing to talk. And she had a civilian witness whose only crime was being better than a man who could not accept that anyone was better than him. 2 weeks. Webb returned to her office and started making calls. If that was all the time she had, she would use every hour of it. Maria knew something was wrong the moment she reached the maintenance building. The door to the staff locker room stood slightly ajar, and the overhead light flickered in a way it had not flickered yesterday. She pushed the door open slowly, her senses sharpening the way they always did when her grandfather's training kicked in. The smell hit her first. Industrial solvent, the kind used to strip paint and corrode metal. Then she saw her locker. The door hung open at an awkward angle, one hinge torn completely free. Inside, her spare uniform had been shredded into ribbons. Her work boots were slashed, the leather curling back from deep cuts. A bottle of solvent had been poured over everything, the chemical eating through fabric and destroying anything it touched. On the back wall of the locker, someone had scratched 3 words into the metal. Go home, spy. Maria stood motionless, cataloging the damage with the clinical detachment her grandfather had taught her. Emotional reactions came later. Assessment came first. The attack had been thorough but sloppy, the work of someone angry rather than professional. The scratched message confirmed it was personal, not random vandalism. She pulled out her phone and took photographs from every angle. Documentation. Chun had said, document everything. She captured the destroyed uniform, the slashed boots, the scratched message, the chemical damage. Evidence that could not be dismissed as her imagination. Then she walked to the security office. The duty officer was a young petty officer named Wallace who looked barely old enough to shave. He listened to her report with increasing discomfort, his eyes darting to his computer screen as she spoke. I need to see the footage from the maintenance building, Maria said. Locker room corridor, last 12 hours. Wallace typed something into his system, then frowned. That is strange. What is strange? The footage from that corridor is corrupted. Shows nothing but static from approximately 2000 last night until 0600 this morning. Maria felt her jaw tighten. Corrupted. It happens sometimes. Power fluctuations, system glitches. Wallace did not meet her eyes as he spoke. I can file a maintenance request to have the system checked. So there is no record of who entered that building last night. Not from the cameras, no. Wallace finally looked at her, and she saw something in his expression that might have been sympathy or might have been fear. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mom. I can document your report, but without footage, there is not much else I can do. Maria nodded slowly. Thank you for your help, petty officer. She walked out of the security office, knowing exactly what had happened. The footage had not been corrupted by a glitch. It had been erased by someone with access to the security system, someone who knew how to cover their tracks. The same someone who had known exactly which locker was hers, exactly when she would be off base, exactly how to send a message without leaving evidence. She was halfway across the courtyard when Brennan appeared. He stepped out from between two buildings, positioning himself directly in her path. His expression carried the satisfied calm of a predator who had cornered its prey. "Ms. Delgado, I heard about your locker. Terrible thing, vandalism. You never know what kind of people have access to these facilities." Maria stopped walking, but did not step back. "No, you never do. I hope you filed a proper report. Documentation is so important in these situations." Brennan smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. Of course, without security footage, these things are almost impossible to investigate. Such a shame when technology fails at the worst possible moment. She held his gaze without flinching. "Is there something you wanted, Chief?" "Just offering friendly advice." Brennan stepped closer, lowering his voice to something intimate and threatening. "This base can be a difficult place for civilians. Accidents happen. Equipment malfunctions. Sometimes people realize they would be happier somewhere else, somewhere less complicated. Are you suggesting I should quit?" "I am suggesting that smart people recognize when a situation has become untenable." He tilted his head, studying her like a specimen. "You got lucky once. Made some people uncomfortable. That kind of thing tends to create problems that follow a person around. But if you left quietly, resigned your contract, moved on to something else, those problems might just disappear." Maria felt her grandfather's dog tags pressing against her chest beneath her shirt. 3 years of hiding, 3 years of silence. And here was a man telling her to disappear again because she had dared to show what she could do. Something shifted inside her. The part that had learned to stay invisible, to accept invisibility as the price of peace, finally broke. "I'm not going anywhere, Chief." Brennan's smile faltered. "Excuse me. I said I'm not going anywhere." Maria stepped toward him, closing the distance he had created. "You vandalized my locker. You erased the security footage. You have been running surveillance on me and punishing anyone who tries to help me. And you think that is going to make me quit. You cannot prove any of that. Maybe not yet. But I have been documenting everything since the day you handed me your rifle. Every incident, every witness, every convenient malfunction." Maria watched his expression shift from confidence to uncertainty. "And I'm not the only one paying attention." "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means Lieutenant Commander Webb has my full statement. It means she has been investigating your history with complaints and transfers and people who try to speak up before me. It means your uncle at the Pentagon might have made problems disappear before, but this time there are too many people watching." Brennan's face went pale. The satisfied calm evaporated, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "You are bluffing." "Am I?" Maria held his gaze. "Ask yourself how I know about Martinez. Ask yourself how I know about Whitmore. Ask yourself how I know about the captain from your uncle's staff who made those complaints go away." The silence between them stretched taut as a tripwire. "You have made a serious mistake," Brennan finally said. His voice had lost its smooth confidence, replaced by something raw and dangerous. "You think Webb can protect you. You think documentation matters. But you do not understand how this works." "I understand exactly how this works." Maria stepped past him, deliberately turning her back. "You're used to people being afraid of you. You're used to winning because nobody fights back. But I'm not nobody, Chief. And I am done being invisible." She walked away without looking back, her heart pounding but her stride steady. Behind her, she heard Brennan's boots on the concrete, frozen in place as he processed what had just happened. She had shown her hand, revealed that she knew things he thought were buried. It was a risk, the kind of move her grandfather would have called either brilliant or stupid, depending on how it played out. But she was tired of hiding, tired of letting men like Brennan control the narrative. Whatever came next, she would face it standing up. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Shun. "Heard about your locker. You okay?" She typed back as she walked. "I am fine, but things are about to get interesting." Captain Marcus Ford had commanded enough operations to recognize disaster when it walked through his door. The intelligence officer's face told him everything before a single word was spoken. Sir, we have a situation developing at the embassy compound in Yemen. Hostages taken, American personnel, 16 confirmed inside the main building. Ford was on his feet before the officer finished speaking. Command Center. Now. The tactical operations center hummed with controlled chaos as Ford entered. Screens displayed satellite imagery, communication feeds, and real-time video from a drone circling the compound. Team 7 was already on station, having been deployed to the region 2 weeks earlier for a training exercise that had just become very real. "Give me the picture," Ford ordered. The intelligence officer pulled up the main display. Hostile force took the compound at 0300 local time. They have barricaded themselves in the main building with the hostages. We have positive identification on at least 12 armed combatants, possibly more. Team 7 has established a perimeter but cannot breach without risking mass casualties. Ford studied the layout. The main building was a 3-story structure with narrow windows and reinforced doors. A frontal assault would be suicide. What about entry points? That is the problem, sir. The officer zoomed in on the satellite image. There is one viable entry point on the north side, a service door that leads to a back stairwell. But it is covered by a hostile sniper positioned in the 3rd-floor window. He has clear sight lines to the entire northern approach. Our team cannot move without neutralizing that position first. Then neutralize it. The officer hesitated. Our sniper, Petty Officer Reeves, took fire during the initial approach. He is alive, but wounded. He cannot take the shot. Ford felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. "Get me Team 7 actual on comms." The connection crackled to life. "This is Lieutenant Harrison, Team 7. Harrison, what is your status on the sniper situation?" "Not good, sir." Harrison's voice was tight with frustration. Reeves took a round to his shooting arm. "He is stable, but out of the fight. I have 2 other qualified marksmen, but the shot is 1,400 meters through a window that gives us about 18 inches of clearance. Wind is variable. We need someone who can thread a needle from over a mile away." Ford looked at the screen, calculating angles and distances. 1,400 meters through an 18-inch window was not a shot. It was a prayer. "What about air support?" "Negative, sir. Hostages are too close. Any ordnance risks the entire building. We need precision, not firepower." The radio crackled again, a different voice cutting through. "Captain Ford, this is Petty Officer Chun. I need to speak with you directly." Ford frowned. Chun was one of Brennan's operators, a solid performer, but not someone who typically inserted himself into command discussions. "What is it, Chun?" "Sir, I know this is going to sound unusual, but I know someone who can make that shot." The command center went quiet. Ford leaned toward the microphone. "Explain." "There is a civilian contractor on base. Maria Delgado. She works maintenance, but she is a former competitive shooter. National champion level. I watched her put 3 rounds through center mass at 800 meters with a rifle she had never fired before. Tightest grouping I have ever seen, and I have trained with some of the best." Ford remembered the briefing from Webb, the investigation into Brennan, the cleaning lady who had outshot a Tier 1 team. He had dismissed it as a personnel issue, a distraction from operational matters. Now, it was suddenly the most relevant piece of information he had. "Chun, you're telling me a maintenance worker can make a 1,400-meter precision shot through an 18-inch window?" "Sir, I'm telling you she is better than anyone I have ever seen. Better than Reeves, better than any of our qualified marksmen. If anyone can make the shot, she can." The silence in the command center stretched as Ford processed the implications. Bringing a civilian into a combat operation violated every protocol in the book. It would create paperwork nightmares, potential liability issues, and questions from every level of command. But 16 American hostages were going to die if he did not find a solution. He turned to his aide. "Give me Webb." Now. Lieutenant Commander Webb arrived in the command center 4 minutes later, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding as Ford explained the situation. "You want me to bring Delgado here?" she said. "I want you to ask her if she can make a 1,400-meter shot through a narrow window with variable wind conditions. And if she says yes, I want her in this room with a rifle in her hands within the hour. Webb nodded once. I know where she is. She was gone before Ford could say anything else. He turned back to the screens, watching the drone footage of American personnel huddled in a building half a world away, their lives hanging on the skills of a woman who cleaned rifle ranges for a living. The door to the command center burst open. Brennan strode in, his face flushed with anger. Captain, I need to speak with you about what I just heard. Not now, Chief. Sir, you cannot bring that woman into a tactical operation. She is a civilian under active security investigation. She has no clearance, no training, no authority to be involved in military operations. Ford turned slowly, his patience worn thin by crisis and politics. Chief Brennan, I have 16 hostages who are going to be executed in approximately 2 hours if we do not neutralize a sniper position that none of my qualified operators can reach. If you have a better solution than the woman who outshot your entire team, I would love to hear it. Brennan's mouth opened and closed. She got lucky. One range session does not qualify someone for combat operations. 3 national championships qualify someone. Ford let the words land like hammer blows. I read Webb's preliminary report, Chief. I know exactly who Maria Delgado is. And right now, she might be the only person who can save those lives. Sir, this is a mistake. Maybe, but it is my mistake to make. Ford turned his back on Brennan. Now get out of my command center or make yourself useful. Your choice. The door opened again. Webb entered, and behind her, still wearing her maintenance uniform with chemical stains on the sleeves, walked Maria Delgado. She stopped just inside the threshold, taking in the screens, the operators, the tactical displays. Her eyes moved to the satellite imagery of the compound, then to the specifications scrolling beside it. 1,400 meters, 18-inch window, variable wind. Ford watched her face, looking for hesitation, for doubt, for any sign that this was a mistake. He saw none of those things. What rifle are you giving me? Maria asked. Ford allowed himself the smallest breath of relief. She had not asked if she could do it. She had asked what tool she would use. That was answer enough. Maria stood before the tactical display, her mind shifting into a state she had not accessed in years. The world narrowed to data points, calculations, and the geometry of distance. 1,400 meters, 18-inch window, variable wind from the southeast at 8 to 12 knots. One shot to save 16 lives. She felt her grandfather beside her, the way she always did when the math mattered. Breathe, Mija. The rifle is just a tool. You are the weapon. Show me the wind data, she said. A technician pulled up meteorological readings on an adjacent screen. Gusts varying between 8 and 14 knots, shifting direction by up to 15 degrees. The kind of conditions that turn precision shooting into gambling. Maria studied the patterns, finding the rhythm beneath the chaos. Wind was never random. It followed terrain, responded to temperature differentials, created pockets of stillness between surges. Her grandfather had taught her to read wind the way others read words, to feel its intentions before it moved. What is the ambient temperature at the target location? 87 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity at 42%. She ran the calculations in her head. Heat mirage would affect the sight picture, bending light between the shooter and target. Humidity would alter air density, changing how the bullet traveled. At 1,400 meters, even small variables compounded into significant deviations. Captain Ford stepped beside her. Can you make this shot? Maria did not look away from the screen. I cannot make it from here. Your sniper on the ground will have to take it. But I can talk him through the adjustments. Reeves is wounded. He cannot hold a rifle steady. Then find me someone who can. Maria turned to face Ford. I need a shooter with steady hands and the discipline to follow instructions without questioning them. The shot is possible, but only if whoever takes it trusts me completely. Ford turned to the communications officer. Get me Harrison. The radio crackled. Harrison here, sir. Lieutenant, I need your best available marksman on comms with our consultant. She's going to guide the shot. A pause. Sir, my best available is Chun. He is not sniper qualified, but he has the steadiest hands on the team. Maria felt something shift in her chest. Chun, the young operator Brennan, had humiliated the one who had risked his career to warn her. Now his hands would determine whether 16 people lived or died. Put him on, she said. The connection transferred. Ms. Delgado. Chen's voice carried controlled tension. I heard what you need. I am in position with Reeves's rifle. What is your sight picture? I have the window. Target is visible, seated position, rifle across his lap. He is watching the northern approach. Maria closed her eyes, building the scene in her mind. Distance to target. Scope reads 1422 meters. What is your current elevation adjustment? Reeves had it set for 1200. I added 2 MOA based on the range card. Not enough. Maria ran the numbers again. At that distance, with that ammunition, you need another 0.75 MOA. Adjust your elevation turret 3, clicks up. She heard the quiet snick of the adjustment through the radio. Done. Now windage. What is your read on the wind at your position? Flags on the compound are showing left to right, maybe 10 knots. Ignore the flags. They are too high. Catching different air than your bullet will travel through. Look at the vegetation at ground level, halfway between you and the target. A pause. Grass is barely moving. Maybe 2 or 3 knots at ground level. That is your true wind. The bullet will travel mostly through that lower air column. Adjust windage 1.5 MOA right. Another series of clicks. Adjusted. Maria opened her eyes and looked at the drone footage. The hostile sniper sat motionless in the window, unaware that death was being calculated from half a world away. Now, listen carefully, Chun. At this distance, your bullet will take almost 2 seconds to reach the target. In that time, he could move. The wind could shift. 100 things could change. You need to fire in the pause between his breaths, when his body is most still. How will I know when that is? Watch his chest. When it stops rising, you have a half-second window. That is when you squeeze. The command center had gone completely silent. Ford stood motionless. Webb watched from near the door, and Brennan, who had retreated to the corner after Ford's dismissal, stared at Maria with an expression she could not read. Chen's voice came through the radio, barely above a whisper. I have his breathing pattern. Inhale, exhale, pause. Inhale, exhale, pause. Maria felt her own breathing slow, synchronizing with the rhythm Chen described. Good. On the next pause, send it. The seconds stretched like hours. Maria watched the drone footage, watched the figure in the window, watched the tiny movements of a man who did not know he had seconds to live. She heard Chen's breath catch, then a single word. Firing. The sound of the shot came through the radio, a sharp crack that seemed to echo across continents. On the screen, the figure in the window jerked once and collapsed backward, disappearing from view. Target down. Chen's voice broke with relief. Target is down. The command center erupted. Officers shouted confirmations into radios. The assault team breached through the northern entrance. Maria watched the screens as operators flooded into the building, as hostages were secured, as the crisis that had seemed impossible to solve resolved in seconds. Ford turned to her, something like awe in his expression. That was the most precise shooting guidance I have ever witnessed. Maria shook her head. Chen took the shot. I just did the math. From the corner of the room, she felt Brennan's eyes on her. She met his gaze and held it, letting him see exactly what he had tried to destroy. Not luck, not a fluke. Mastery that he had never possessed and could never take away. He looked away first. Webb appeared at her side, voice low. You just saved 16 lives. Maria touched the dog tag beneath her shirt, feeling her grandfather's presence one more time. No, my grandfather saved them. I just remembered what he taught me. On the screens, American hostages walked into daylight, alive because a cleaning lady had learned to read the wind. The JAG office on the 3rd floor of Building 9 had seen its share of difficult cases, but the folder on Lieutenant Commander Webb's lap represented something different. This was not just misconduct. This was a reckoning years in the making. Commander Webb, the investigating officer, said, "We have reviewed your preliminary documentation. Based on the evidence presented, we are opening a formal inquiry into Chief Warrant Officer Kyle Brennan for conduct unbecoming, harassment, abuse of authority, and evidence tampering. Webb nodded, keeping her expression professional despite the satisfaction warming her chest. What is the timeline? Given the severity of the allegations and the number of potential witnesses, we are expediting. Brennan has been placed on administrative leave effective immediately. His access to all training facilities has been revoked. The words landed with the weight of justice delayed, but finally arriving. 3 days since Maria had guided Chen's shot. 3 days since 16 hostages walked into daylight because a cleaning lady remembered what her grandfather taught her. In that time, the story had spread through every channel on base, official and unofficial, until hiding it became impossible. Webb's phone had not stopped ringing. First came Chun, requesting to provide a formal statement about Brennan's surveillance operation and the counseling statement used as retaliation. Then Rodriguez, one of Brennan's senior operators, asking quietly if it was too late to report things he had witnessed over the years. Then names Webb did not recognize, voices she had never heard, all saying variations of the same thing. I saw what she did. I heard what happened. I have a story too. By the second day, Webb had documented statements from 7 additional witnesses describing a pattern of abuse spanning Brennan's entire tenure. Operators humiliated for minor mistakes. Careers derailed through manufactured paperwork. A culture of fear maintained through political protection that everyone assumed would last forever. The protection arrived on the morning of the 3rd day. Webb was in Captain Ford's office when the call came through. She watched Ford's expression harden as he listened, watched him grip the phone receiver until his knuckles went white. "Admiral, I understand your concerns," Ford said. His voice carried the careful neutrality of a man choosing his words with precision. "However, the investigation is proceeding through proper channels. The evidence is substantial, and multiple witnesses have come forward voluntarily." A pause as the voice on the other end spoke. Webb could not hear the words, but she could guess their content. Pressure. Threats. The same tactics that had made complaints disappear for 6 years. "With respect, sir," Ford continued, 16 American hostages are alive today because of a civilian contractor that your nephew tried to have removed from this base on fabricated security concerns. That story is already circulating through JSOC, SOCOM, and the Pentagon Press Office. Any attempt to interfere with this investigation will become part of that story. Another pause, longer this time. "I appreciate your perspective, Admiral." Ford's jaw tightened. "But my perspective is that Chief Brennan has been protected long enough. The investigation will proceed." "Good day, sir." He hung up the phone and sat motionless for a long moment. Then he looked at Webb. That was Rear Admiral Charles Brennan. He suggested that pursuing this matter would be damaging to unit cohesion and harmful to my career prospects. "What did you tell him?" Ford almost smiled. "I told him the truth. His nephew's career is over, and no amount of Pentagon influence is going to change that. Not after what happened in that command center." Webb allowed herself a moment of relief. And Chen's counseling statement, already expunged. Ford pulled a document from his desk. "I signed the order this morning. His record will reflect a commendation for performance under pressure during the hostage operation. The negative paperwork never existed. He deserves more than that. He will get it." Ford leaned back in his chair. "The whole team will. But right now, I need you to focus on building an airtight case. Brennan's uncle just showed us that he's going to fight this. We need to make sure we win." Webb spent the next 6 hours in the JAG office, organizing witness statements into a coherent narrative of abuse. Martinez's original complaint, buried for 3 years, was resurrected and added to the file. Whitmore provided a written statement from his supply depot in Guam, finally able to tell his story to someone who would listen. Thompson, the operator Brennan had broken, declined to participate but sent a 2-word email that Webb added to the record anyway. "Thank you." By evening, the formal charges were drafted. Conduct unbecoming an officer, harassment and creation of a hostile work environment, abuse of authority, tampering with evidence, specifically the security footage from the maintenance building, false official statements regarding the security complaint against Maria Delgado. Webb read through the charge sheet one final time before signing her endorsement. 6 years of misconduct, condensed into legal language that would end Kyle Brennan's career the way he had ended so many others. She found Maria in the maintenance building, cleaning equipment as if nothing had changed. The normalcy of the scene felt almost absurd given what had happened in the command center 3 days earlier. "You're still working," Webb said. Maria looked up from her mop. "Someone has to clean the ranges." Webb shook her head. "Not you. Not anymore." She pulled an envelope from her jacket. "This is a formal offer of employment from Naval Special Warfare Command. Civilian marksmanship instructor, GS 12 pay grade, full benefits. You will be teaching the operators instead of cleaning up after them." Maria set down her mop and took the envelope. Her fingers traced the official seal before she opened it. "Captain Ford signed it personally," Webb continued. "He said anyone who can guide a shot like that from 8,000 miles away belongs in a classroom, not a supply closet." Maria read the offer in silence. When she looked up, her eyes glistened. "My grandfather always said that knowledge dies if you do not pass it on. He made me promise to teach someone someday. Sounds like he knew you better than you knew yourself." Maria folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her pocket. "When do I start?" "Monday." Webb allowed herself a smile. "Range 4. Same place you have been cleaning for 3 years. Only this time, you will be the one everyone is watching." Maria touched the dog tags beneath her shirt. "I think I am ready to be seen." Webb turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it is worth, Brennan's court-martial is scheduled for next month. 7 witnesses, documented pattern of abuse, evidence tampering. His uncle cannot make this one disappear." "Good," Maria said quietly. "Maybe the next person he would have targeted will never have to know his name." Webb nodded once and walked out into the evening air, leaving Maria alone with an offer letter and the promise of a future she had stopped believing was possible. The cemetery in Arizona had not changed since the last time Maria visited. Red dust, scattered mesquite trees, and rows of headstones baking under a sun that never seemed to soften. She walked the familiar path to her grandfather's grave, her footsteps crunching on gravel that remembered her from years of visits. Staff Sergeant Roberto Delgado, Scout Sniper, beloved father and grandfather. The words carved in a stone could never capture who he really was. Teacher, mentor, the man who saw something in an 80-year-old girl and spent the rest of his life helping her become it. Maria knelt beside the headstone and pressed her palm against the warm granite. "I did what you asked, Abuelo. I taught someone." She smiled at the memory of Chen's voice through the radio, steady despite the impossible pressure, trusting her calculations with 16 lives hanging in the balance. "I think you would have liked him. He listened the way I used to listen to you." The wind moved through the mesquite branches, carrying the dry smell of desert that had surrounded every lesson he ever taught her. She had learned to read wind in this landscape, learned to calculate distance across these empty miles, learned that patience was not passive but the most active form of strength. "I hid for a long time after you left." Maria traced the letters of his name with her finger. "I thought staying invisible was honoring your memory somehow, keeping what you gave me safe by never using it. But that was wrong, was it not? You never taught me to hide. You taught me to wait for the right moment. And when the moment came, to act without hesitation." She pulled the dog tags from beneath her shirt and held them in the sunlight. The metal had grown warm against her skin during the drive, carrying heat the way it had carried his heartbeat for decades. "I start my new job tomorrow, teaching marksmanship to the same operators I used to clean up after." Maria laughed softly. "You would probably say something about life having a sense of humor, but I think you would be proud. I think this is what you wanted all along." She stayed until the sun began its descent toward the mountains, then kissed her fingers and pressed them to the stone. "I will come back soon, and I will tell you about my students the way you used to tell me about yours." The drive back to San Diego took 5 hours, but Maria barely noticed the miles. Her mind was already in range 4, already standing where Brennan had stood, already imagining the operators who would look at her and wonder what a former cleaning lady could possibly teach them. She would show them, the way her grandfather had shown her. Monday morning arrived with coastal fog and the smell of salt air drifting across the base. Maria walked through the main gate with a new badge clipped to her chest the word instructor printed beneath her photograph. The security guard who had waved her through 1,000 times without acknowledgement actually nodded as she passed. Range 4 was already occupied when she arrived. A training class of 12 operators stood at the firing line, their instructor reviewing fundamentals that Maria could recite in her sleep. She waited at the edge of the facility until the session ended, watching their groupings, noting their stances, already cataloging the adjustments each shooter needed. One operator stayed behind after the others departed. A young woman, barely 25, firing round after round at a target that refused to cooperate. Her groupings scattered across the paper like she was fighting the rifle instead of working with it. Maria walked to the firing line and stood beside her. "You are anticipating the recoil." The woman looked up, startled. "Excuse me." Your shoulders tense right before you squeeze. You are bracing for the kick before it happens, and that tension pulls your shots high and right. Maria gestured toward the rifle. "May I?" The woman handed over the weapon with obvious skepticism. Maria checked the chamber, settled into a prone position, and fired 3 rounds in quick succession. The target showed a tight, clustered dead center, 3 holes close enough to touch. She rose and returned the rifle. The recoil is going to happen whether you fight it or not. Your job is to stay relaxed until the moment after the trigger breaks. Let the rifle do what it is going to do, and keep your body out of the argument. The woman stared at the target, then at Maria. "You're the cleaning lady. The one who saved the hostages." "I was a cleaning lady." Maria smiled. "Now I am your instructor. Try again. And this time, pretend the rifle is a friend, not an enemy." The woman settled back into position, took a breath, and fired. The shot landed 2 inches closer to center than any of her previous attempts. "Better," Maria said. Again, they worked together for the next hour, adjusting stance and breathing and the subtle mechanics of trigger control. By the end, the woman's groupings had tightened from scattered chaos to respectable clusters. Not perfect, but progress. Progress was everything. "You know what you were doing," the woman said as she packed her gear. "I heard stories, but I was not sure what to believe. Believe that everyone can improve." Maria watched her walk away. "And believe that where you start does not determine where you finish." The afternoon sun had shifted by the time Chun appeared at the range entrance. He wore civilian clothes, off-duty but unable to stay away. "First day going well?" he asked. Maria leaned against the barrier and looked out at the targets she would spend her days teaching people to hit. "Better than I expected. The operators are skeptical, but they are listening. They would be stupid not to." Chun moved to stand beside her. "I wanted to thank you. For everything. You took the shot. I just did the calculations." "That is not what I mean." Chun turned to face her. "Before you came along, I thought being part of this community meant accepting things I knew were wrong. Keeping quiet because speaking up was too dangerous. You showed me that was a choice, not a requirement." Maria thought of all the people who had stayed silent over the years, all the careers Brennan had destroyed while witnesses looked away. She could not blame them. Fear was powerful, and the system had been designed to protect men like Brennan at the expense of everyone else. But systems could change, one person at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of courage building on another until the weight became impossible to ignore. "You showed yourself," she said. "I just reminded you who you already were." Chun smiled and extended his hand. She took it, feeling the steady grip that had held a rifle at 1,400 meters and trusted a cleaning lady's math with 16 lives. "See you around, Instructor Delgado." Maria watched him walk away, then turned back to the range. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that her grandfather would have called God showing off. "Now I want to ask you something. Wherever you are watching this, whether it is early morning or late at night, whether you are at home or on the road, think about a time when someone looked at you and saw nothing. When they assumed you were less than you are because of your job or your background or the way you looked. Comment below and tell me about the moment when you proved them wrong, or the moment you're still waiting for. Because that moment will come. It always does. And when it arrives, you have to be ready to take the shot. Maria pulled the dog tags from beneath her shirt and held them in the fading light. The metal caught the last rays of sun, glowing warm against her palm. Her grandfather had worn these through a war, had pressed them in her hand as he lay dying, had trusted her to carry his name into a future he would never see. She had carried it through hiding and grief and 3 years of invisibility. She had carried it into a command center where her words guided a bullet through an 18-inch window from 8,000 miles away. And now she would carry it into a classroom, passing on knowledge that had almost died with her. The ranges stretched empty before her, waiting for tomorrow's students, waiting for the next generation of shooters who would learn what her grandfather had taught her. Patience, precision, the discipline to wait for the right moment, and the courage to act when it arrived. Maria slipped the dog tags back beneath her shirt and walked toward the parking lot, leaving Range 4 behind as the sun disappeared below the horizon. She was done being invisible, and she was just getting started.